Calibrating cybernetics.
Talk to him now.
AT, Andre.
Come on, Dre.
Yep. Trippin with Let's Go. Woo! Trippin with Theobold.
What's your name?
Theo so bold.
Yeah.
Driggity. Let's go. Trippin with Theobold. Trippin.
What are we doing?
Trippin with Theobold.
Come on, Dre.
Mic check 1 2. Are we on? Hey, what's going on, guys? And welcome to another episode of Trippin with Theobold. I'm your host, Andre Theobold. Welcome to the show. Welcome to Theobold Studios, where we do it ourselves, aka do-it-yourself productions. Yeah, so before we go any further, or before I go any further, make sure you guys hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, tell a friend to tell a friend, and do all that fun internet stuff like the old people say. Also, boom, AT is where it's at on most forms of social media. So follow me. Yeah, so we in here. Yeah. So as you guys know, how we do over here in Trippin with Theobold Studios, we got to get started with the tongue twisties. We got to get the brain and the tongue coordinated so there'll be less trippage on the show. So today's tongue twisty is brought to you by the letter N. N. Since we're going to be talking about something that deals with the letter N, but we're going to get to that. Anyways, here we go. So as you guys know, you can either read along with me or you can watch me struggle. The choice is yours. You always have a choice in Trippin with Theobold Studios. Okay, so here we go. Let's go ahead and get to it. Tongue twisting number 1. No nose knows like a gnome's nose knows. No nose knows like a gnome's nose knows. Last time. No nose knows like a gnome's nose knows. Gnomes be sniffing. Number 2. Noisy Norma nibbles on nutritious nuts. Hey, I got to get my head out the gutter. All right. Noisy Norma nibbles on nutritious nuts. Last time, let me stop, man. Noisy Norma nibbles on nutritious nuts. And look at that. We can talk free-ish because the cussing timer is off. Now we can say what we want to kind of say the way we kind of want to say it. All right, let me go and get this cussing timer out of here. So now I know that I'm free-ish. Last tongue twisty. Norma Noonan nodded nicely at noisy neighbors. Norma Noonan nodded nicely at noisy neighbors. Last time. Norma Noonan nodded nicely at noisy neighbors. And yay, tongue twisters are done. Got them knocked out the way. Now we can go ahead and get into the main portion of the show. So, this is another engineering-centric episode. So if you don't really care about what goes on in the engineering world, or if you don't care what goes on in the engineering world, you can just go ahead and move past the channel. I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to try to sell you something that you don't want. Over here, I let you know what it is up front. So if you don't want to hear what I got to talk about, just go ahead and watch another channel, watch something else. Okay. But if you want to know what goes on in the engineering world and what can happen, tune in. This is what, well, you're already tuning in, so I don't know why I said to tune in, but let me go ahead and get to it. All right. So today's episode is about testing, right? I come from a systems engineering background where I do a multitude of things, right? I write requirements, or I define requirements. Sorry, I meant to say that. Yeah, I define requirements. I write test cases. I write test procedures. I execute test cases and procedures. I come up with corner conditions and corner cases and all this fun stuff, right? So in the engineering world, if you've been involved or if you're not familiar with what goes on, there's a sub study or a sub area called integration, where basically you bring everything together and you hook it all up and you test it to see if it works the way it's supposed to work per requirements. All right. So let me start off with a question. What's the first thing? What's the most important rule when it comes to testing? What's the first rule when it comes to testing? That's how I probably should have started the episode. What's the first rule when it comes to testing? The first rule when it comes to testing is know what you're testing. You got to know what you're testing, right? Duh. Sounds simple, right? Well, I had to find out the hard way. I had to find out the hard way, you know? Yeah, so what happened was, well, here's why you want to know what you're testing, right? When you don't know what you're testing, whatever you're coming up with, or whatever output or whatever results you get, don't mean anything because you don't know what you're testing, right? Let me give you an example to illustrate, right? So, when I was about 4 years in as a systems engineer at this one company, I almost got fired because I didn't know what I was testing. It wasn't all my fault, but I'll get to that. Let me explain what happened. Okay, so basically, here's what happened, right? So I was in my manager's office, you know, and we were like, you know, small talking about sports, you know, talking about milestones coming up for the week. You know, I was kind of in that realm where I could, you know, have small talk with the manager and talk about, you know, sports. And, you know, like our meetings weren't just A, B, C, D. It was, hey, did you watch the game last night? Okay, yeah. Okay, what about B? Where are we at with this, right? It was more loose, right? So I'm having a meeting with my manager, and he gets a phone call from a principal engineer from the rig, right? And the rig was basically it's a lab or it's a mock-up of all the aircraft that we support, and basically it's all these computer systems hooked up, and it's basically you'll see like different sections of the lab, and it was a big campus, right? So when you go downstairs in this rig, like there were tons of rigs, right? You had rigs for different programs, right? So anyways, you know, we were talking or whatever, and a principal engineer or a chief engineer from one of the rigs called up, and I could hear him on the other end of the phone, and he was mad. He was like, get someone down here to fix my damn rig. You know, your shit is broke again. You know, he was just going off at the mouth. Your shit is broke. Get someone down here to fix my damn rig. All right. So the actual project I supported or what I worked on at the time was called TAWS. And TAWS stands for Terrain Awareness and Warning Systems. And basically it's a computer system on board an aircraft that takes in aircraft sensor data, and it aids the pilot with not crashing the plane into the ground. Right. So they'll get commands like pull up. Well, really, that's all you can do is pull up. Right. So end the story. Go research it more. I've already done it. This is not the point of the podcast. The point of the pod is for me to illustrate why knowing what you're testing is important. So anyways, TAWS is broke, and there was a misconception with TAWS, right? Like basically our system provided topographical maps or topo maps for the rest of the aircraft. And if the topo maps didn't show, we would show like a purple screen. And whenever the maps didn't show, people always say, hey, TAWS is broke, right? We were like the yellow canary in the lab, right? If maps didn't come up, it was TAWS's fault, which was not the case most of the time. So as you'll see through this example. So my boss hangs up with the chief engineer, and he's like, Andre, I already know what the problem is. Just go down to the rig, figure it out. I'm like, cool, I'm on it. So I go down to the rig, and the way we go about troubleshooting stuff in the rig, or in any engineering world, or this is what I've learned, right? Is when you troubleshoot something, first and foremost, you need to be troubleshooting per the requirements, right? What do the requirements say the system is supposed to do? That's how I play. It's like playing Simon Says. If Simon Says don't do the shit, then it's not going to do it, right? It's real simple. But anyways, first step when I go down to the rig is the first thing I do is I always get a config manager report, right? I want to get a config report of the current rig, right? Because what that's going to tell me is that's going to tell me all of the subsystem or all of the software components that are loaded on that system, right? If the wrong shit is loaded, then I'm gonna load it with the right shit. And when I load it with the right shit, I'm going to run my test. And if it works per requirements, it works, right? The first step is to get a config report, right? Second step is to verify all of the inputs coming from the exterior sources, right? So if I'm not getting all of the correct inputs from the exterior subsystems, right, I'm going to raise my hand and say, hey, you guys need to make sure that we're getting the right shit. But until you guys do that, I got to go. Bye. Right. But if we're getting all of the correct inputs from the external systems per the interface control document or the ICD, and we're still not working per requirements, now it's my job to go through and to walk through step by step, look at the requirements, and then capture information to take back to our team to figure out what it is going on with our system, right? So I go down to the lab or the rig, and I take my laptop and I go behind the rig, and I basically like plug in my laptop to one of the switch panels, and I go to get the config report, and the chief engineer like sees me. He's like, what are you doing in my goddamn rig? I'm like, I'm Andre. I'm here to help fix your TAWS issue. What the hell are you doing behind my rig? I'm like, well, I have to do a config report to make sure that I get to make sure that we verify that all the right software. I know what I have loaded in my goddamn rig. Just fix my shit. So back then, like I said, I was young in corporate America. When you have an older white dude that's like belligerent and cussing at you, you don't want to rock the boat too much because you want to get the check. You know what I'm saying? You don't want to get fired. You want to make sure, you tiptoeing so you can get that paycheck. So like I just panic and I just start pushing buttons and shit. I'm just pushing shit. I'm looking busy for 3 hours doing this shit. All right, I'm in there rig dancing like a goddamn monkey, right? So I'm playing around. I'm just panicking, right? I'm just trying to look busy so he keeps off my ass, So I do this until the day's over, and then I go back to my desk, and then next day, my manager sees me and we're talking sports again, small talk. He's like, "Hey Andre, did you ever resolve the issue down in that rig?" I was like, "Man, you know what? I'm still on it. I'm gonna figure it out. I'll let you know." He was like, "Wait a minute, you didn't figure it out? Like, And the first thing he asked was, did you get a config report? And I said, yeah, I tried to, but the chief engineer said that he knows what he has loaded in his rig and not to check it. My manager looked at me and said, you joking? I was like, nah, I mean, he said he knows what's in there and I wasn't trying to get him upset. And he said, dude, you got about 2 minutes to get out of my face. Cause if not, you're about to get fired, cause you're wasting time and you're wasting company money, just, I already know what the issue is. Just go down and confirm it. So I'm like, oh shit. So I go down there and, I'm like playing hide and go seek, trying to make sure I don't see this chief engineer down there. And I sneak in there and I do a config manager report and I look at the database that we have loaded. They have the test database loaded, right? So the test database is just bullshit, right? So that's why they were getting purple maps. So end of the day, I was trying to fix something to where I didn't even know what I was even testing, right? Prime example, right? That's why you want to know what it is you're testing before you start testing. So there were a lot of issues or a lot of situations that went on. There was a lot of things that happened, right? Now, like the more mature me or the more seasoned me, I'm not as afraid of getting fired as I was. Like if I'm doing the right thing and if I'm doing my job and you want to fire me, then fuck it, fire me. You know what I'm saying? That's how I feel. Do I want that to happen? No. But that's what it was back then. Back then, it was like that was my first job and I'm trying not to fuck up, so I was up here like tiptoeing and tap dancing and shit, There were ways I could have handled that chief engineer differently, like one thing I could have done was I could have just went the asshole route, right? I could have went the asshole route and just ignored him and act like I didn't hear what he was saying. That probably would have been the best way, right? Because if he grabs my hand or does something physical, like to stop me from doing my job, I can always go to HR and be like, yo, yeah, there was an altercation. My manager told me to come down here to fix something. I'm fixing it. And he just grabbed my hand, right? And he was yelling at me in a very belligerent manner, right? So one way I could have handled that was I could have just ignored him and just did my job, right? And then I could have been like, oh, well, yeah, hey, by the way, I'm so-and-so. I'm here to fix TAWs. You have the wrong test database loaded. When you load the right test database, your system will work fine, right? And I could have just left it at that, right? Or I could have went full snitch mode, right? Like the moment he told me not to validate what he had loaded in his rig, I could have went right to my manager and said, hey man, you gotta talk. Hey man, talk to your boy, man. He's talking at me sideways. He's cussing at me, telling me he knows what he has loaded in his rig. He won't let me he won't let me verify what it is I need to verify. So in order for me to do my job, I need you to do your job and talk to him so I can do my job, right? That's one way I could have handled it, But back then I was scared, man. Like I was back then I was back there. Back then I was tap dancing and shit. I was in between a rock and a hard place, man. I was stressed out during those little couple hours, because I knew what I had to do. I just couldn't do it because I had someone with higher authority blocking me from doing what I wanted to do. And these are things that go on in the workplace every day. So you managers that are out there, you probably have coworkers that know what they're doing, but you have other people in the organization that are roadblocks that are blocking them from doing what they can do, right? So, if you see one of your employees struggling to get something done, maybe take 2 steps back and say, hey, is there something I'm missing here? What's taking you so long? And then that'll give them the opportunity to speak up, to go snitch on whoever is holding them back from getting a job done, But that's besides the point. The main purpose of today's episode was the importance of knowing what you are testing, right? Now I get it. Like some of us are customers. Like, look, if you're a customer and if you buy a product, I said product. If you're a customer and if you buy a product, you should just you should be able to do whatever it is you want to do. It's like, it's not your job to be the engineer. It's not your job to figure out how it works, or what your job is to just say, hey, look, this thing works the way this thing works per what I paid for, right? When you're a customer, you buy something and you know how it works and you just use it. Right. But, with me, with my engineering background, like my mind works a little different. Not saying it's better, it just works different. Like, for example, let's say, for example, hypothetically speaking, I bought a Tesla, right? Let's say I bought a Tesla, and let's say that I'm trying to put my Tesla in reverse to back out of a parking lot, but I can't, or it just won't do it. Right? As a paying customer, my car broke. Right? My car's broke. But with my engineering mindset, the first thing I'm going to think about, I'm going to say, okay, my car is supposed to be going into reverse, but it's not. Let me look at what software is loaded, or what firmware / software is loaded on my vehicle. Right? And I'm probably going to do a Google search to make sure that there's no callback or no issue with versions of software, right? If I Google and say, hey, my car won't go into reverse, and they say, oh, if you're running this version of Tesla software, you need to upgrade to this version of software because we found an issue, right? If the car detected that it is running version Y of software where they detected an issue, and it's not supposed to allow you to drive with that software, and I put the car into reverse and it doesn't do it, the car is working per requirements, right? It's working per requirements, right? So there's a difference between things working and things working per requirements. I remember I worked at one company, and this company knew nothing about systems engineering. Like, they were horrible when it came to systems engineering. Like, they didn't know why requirements were important. They didn't know how to write test cases. They didn't know how to look for corner conditions. Like, when I got there, I was really more of a pain in their ass, because they think that they didn't already did the shit and then made it, that it's already working. But nah, just because something works the way you think it's supposed to work doesn't mean it's working per design or per requirements. So I remember, like, the biggest problem was, I remember when I was at this company, I go into the lab, and then the software engineers or the program engineers or whatever that would be working on a program, they would come to me and be like, hey man, it's not working. And they would just push buttons and say, hey, it's not working. I'm like, okay, where are the requirements at? Requirements? We don't need those. Okay. So person A thought the system works this way. Person B said it should work this way. Person C said it works this way. It's like, which way is it? This is why we have requirements. So anyways, long story short, man, like, at that company, I used to piss people off, not intentionally, but it was an art to what I had to do, because I was kind of in between a rock and a hard place there. I feel like I'm going off on a tangent. I feel like I'm kind of delving into another topic. What is systems engineering and what is it all about? Maybe I'll do an episode on that later. But for those of you out there, if you have something that's not working, make sure you know what you're testing, right? Make sure you're up to the latest and greatest version of software, and make sure, you're at where you're supposed to be at. Because if you're at software version XYZ and you're supposed to be at software version ABC, and you're testing something per software XYZ, you're not testing ABC, you're testing XYZ. You're testing two different things, right? So anywho, I feel like I got my point across. If you have any comments, put them in the comment section. You know, if you have any issues with what I said, put them in the comment section. I don't hold any comments. This is an open forum to have open, honest communication. So put anything you want to put in the comment section. You know what I'm saying? Tell a friend to tell a friend. Do all that fun internet stuff like the old people say. And also don't forget, AT is where it's at on most forms of social media. So follow me. And with all that being said, I'm out of here, folks. Peace. Yep. Trippin with Theobold.
Let's go.
Caliente.
Trippin. Yep. Trippin. Trippin. Trippin with Theobold.
Trippin with Theobold.